story, one of our headlines this morning: government doesn't have to comply with a 2018 three-year public sector wage agreement. For now, the Labour Court dismissing an application from public sector unions to get the government to stick to the deal. The court has found that the enforcement clause was unlawful. The government is battling to pay the last leg of the agreement. So what's next now for the unions? Claude Naika from the Public Servants Association is joining us now, together with Mugwena Malulega from the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you very much for your time. Claude and Mugwena. Mugwena, can I start with you, because I've seen your reaction as SATU. You expressed shock and anger the other day at this ruling. Now, that's something for the record, of course. Now, the reaction is one thing, but what is next really for you now as SATU?
Well, as the organization, we're going to be holding our National Executive Committee meeting from this morning until Saturday. And we are presenting all the options that are there. And clearly it is that we are going to take counsel from our legal team that is working on studying the judgment and looking at the options in terms of whether we could approach the Concord in terms of collective bargaining regime in the country as it's been challenged by this particular judgment. We will also explore other alternatives that are there that our legal teams shall be presenting to us. But as an organization, we are really not happy, and we are really shocked by the fact that the collective bargaining regime in the country has been undermined. And this is the only democratic platform where workers have to express their views in an orderly manner, where there is no anarchy. But if you close down that particular process, unfortunately, we might see anarchy in the public service. And these are the services that are very, very critical, very essential for our people. And therefore, I think it's important that the state must also think about the relations and the trust that are very important in negotiations.
Claude, PSA standpoint on this?
Yeah, good morning to you. We, like our colleagues, are very extremely disappointed at the judgment. We felt that the judgment hasn't highlighted quite a few issues that we had put in arguments. As early as yesterday, we obviously engaged our counsel. We're looking at it very closely. We're looking at aspects of the judgment that we might have to challenge. So at this stage, our counsel is busy with that process. They will inform us accordingly as to areas that we can challenge. We're also looking at other possibilities or avenues that we can proceed with, that we can try and sort out this impasse that we have with the salary agreement as such.
Now, I'm just going to draw... thanks, Claude. Sorry to cut in there. I'm just going to draw, gentlemen, your attention to what I saw being reported, one aspect of the court ruling. SATU saying that they are meeting from today to discuss options. I don't know if the PSA will be having a meeting as well. But before you answer that, the question for me that stands out is that the court said that in this current circumstance of the country, it does not appear to be just and equitable to order the government to expend significant and scarce financial resources. I mean, the state is arguing that it would need 3.2 billion rand extra. I mean, don't you think it's a fair enough argument there, Mugwena? Let me start with you briefly.
Thank you for the question. And clearly it is that the question is a fair question, okay? However, the agreement was signed in 2018, and clearly it is that we're basing our multi-term agreement on what they call multi-term expenditure framework of the government. So on that particular basis, therefore, the government had already budgeted for this particular collective agreement. And clearly it is that there is inconsistencies in terms of our government is taking decision around this particular issue because clearly it is that the decision not to honor this particular collective agreement was not discussed with us before it was presented in Parliament.
Is that the issue? Is that the issue that,
yes.
that because when the agreement was signed in 2018, none of us could have predicted that we will have a coronavirus pandemic at the time, that there will be extra pressure on the state coffers. So is your issue really that you were not consulted before the decision was made that they can't pay? Is that the issue?
The real issue is that one. It is that you can't use coronavirus that came in March and when already in Feb, basically, or in December, basically the government had already taken a decision in 2019 that they're not going to pay. So where was coronavirus at that time? We sympathize with the country that we're facing coronavirus, we're facing unemployment, and we are not blind to the plight of the people of our country. But the issue here is a principal issue. When are you going to have an agreement that will ever be honored? Would you be able to have another multi-term agreement that will then guarantee the state of stability if you don't honor the agreement?
Yeah, so Claude, that would be an issue for the PSA as well, that you were not consulted before? Or are you also questioning the credibility or the resilience of multilateral and multi-party agreements?
Well, there's two very central issues here that we need to highlight. One is that unions were never in favor of a multilateral agreement. We always wanted a single-term agreement, but at the insistence of government, and I think one of the reasons why you have a multi-term agreement is that, as my colleague says, that you prepare and you budget for this over the 3-year period. The second issue that I want to highlight as well, that we're only looking at one clause of the salary agreement. The rest of the clauses or the issues in that salary agreement entails other monetary issues which was honored. So I can't see how the government can now come and say, listen, they don't have the funds, particularly for the salary increases, when you have honored other issues in that agreement, and you've also paid for the past 2 years as well. And the third issue that I want to highlight is just not a matter of saying whether they can pay the outstanding salary bill. The court centered on something very, very crucial, where it highlighted that government negotiators did not have the requisite authority and mandate to enter into this collective agreement. How do you come to the bargaining forum without the requisite authority? That's not negotiating in good faith. This leads us to the very critical question. How do we take collective bargaining in this country forward in future?
So what are you going to do? So what are you going to do as PSA? Because SATU, from what Mogoena is telling us this morning, the executive is going to be meeting from today over the next couple of days, and then they'll be weighing a number of options, including more legal action that might end up in the Concord. What is the PSA's next steps?
Well, we've already met with our legal counsel. They are going to draw up the areas in which of the judgment that we can look at, possibly an appeal and possible industrial action. They're going to give us that options. Once that option has been presented to us, our principals meet, and then we will decide on a conclusive way forward. Should
the country be bracing itself into the beginning of the new year to a public sector union strike, Mogoena?
Yes, we should be bracing ourselves for that. Because,
is that fair? Is that fair? Well, understanding the financial constraints of the country.
Well, we're not blind to that. We are always very sensitive to that.
But then, do you have to consider a strike? Do we have to consider a strike?
How do you defend collective bargaining as a matter of principle in this country? Because as my colleague is saying, how on earth will we ever be able to ask the government whether they have got a mandate or not a mandate? Will we ever be able to sit in the cabinet and be able to know whether the cabinet is dealing with these particular issues? We have got no authority. We have got no right to sit in cabinet meetings so that we can know whether these people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So basically, it is questioning the credibility of our democratic platforms, which are collective bargaining chambers, and we want to defend that. And that's why an industrial action is required, because that is balancing the power that the government has and the power that the workers do not have. The only power we have is a strike. And that's why we can be able to bring the government back into the table to respect the law and respect collective bargaining regime in our country. Because if we don't do that, then there will be no bargaining in this country, and therefore there's going to be anarchy. We cannot allow anarchy. This is our country. We love our country. And therefore, we cannot allow a situation where services that are critical and essential are going to be disrupted without proper procedures being followed.
Okay, Claude, it seems like from a SATU's perspective, industrial action is a possibility as we go into next year. The PSA, would you consider industrial action as well?
The nature of collective bargaining is such, we cannot continue begging for the rest of our life whilst our members suffer. At some stage, we got to take a decision and say we've explored all options, and in any organization, industrial action will be the last resort. And I think once we have explored all other options, and if we do not come to a possible solution, then possibly we should brace ourselves for industrial action as well.
So when are you going to seek your members' approval or not of such industrial action?
Well, we're currently with the legal process and opinion. Once that is finalized, it's coming to a period where it's the festive season, so it makes it very difficult for us. But we would possibly try and engage them as early as January.
Mogoena, or SATU, your executive is meeting from today. That will be an option that's on the table as well for consideration.
Yeah, there will be an option, and obviously we have got to go back to our members. However, we are also waiting for the legal counsel to be able to table to us what are the possible legal options that are there. But clearly, I can say to you, an appeal is inevitable in this particular case. We are going to proceed with the appeal to the Concord. Whilst we are waiting for them, this one is final. It's a sacrosanct.
Okay, thank you very much, Mogoena, and thank you very much, Claude, representing your respective trade unions, being SATU and the PSA. So there you have it. They're consulting their legal counsel, and after that, their members. It is likely that public sector unions like SATU and the PSA will be considering possible industrial action. That means strike, in other words, as we head into the new year. They're very upset about what this court ruling means for collective bargaining, among other things, despite, in addition to the salary increases, rather. Now, still